You're not.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
My cat wants to join the meeting. She likes the warm computer this time of the day. She likes to come and just sit right on the keyboard.
I know one of mine does that too sometimes.
Had some unusual things typed into the middle of some of my documents.
Exactly.
3 lines of L's. It's oh well. I'm going to get better about getting the minutes done. I really am. No, I like taking minutes. I enjoy it, but I have I'm not a fast enough typer to type well. It's going on, so I write it. Yeah. Oh well.
Right, and then it's another step to have to go back and
Yeah, and I always think, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow.
yeah, I know. I understand. Hi, Paula, how are you?
Doing well. How about everybody else? How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good.
Paula, I have a question that I don't really think it's part of the meeting, so I'll ask you now.
Sure.
The Human Rights Commission is going to be doing some different events for Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happens with Martin Luther King Day is that people volunteer to do things for other organizations and whatever. I know, like one time I, painted a room at an agency and whatever. So they want to do some things for agencies and organizations in Wakefield. And the
Okay.
question for Communitas, is there any kind of project that could be limited to like a 3 or 4 hour time period that would be of interest, or any kind of, we're also going to do a collection for the food pantry, but that was a suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there is. There's a group that meets about stuff like that on Wednesday mornings. Could I get back to you on like Wednesday afternoon?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
That would be great. So, and it can be whatever it is that you'd like it to be. But I would say, somewhere at like 3 or 4 hours, and then we're going to reach out to the town to ask for volunteers to participate.
Okay, great.
And the Human Rights Commission.
Okay, perfect. I'll get back to you. Thank you so much.
I'm apologizing in advance if an orange cat makes an appearance on the screen, because she's very much trying to do so. Stay right there and get off my notepad.
Right, Bill. Hey, Chris, how are you? Just waiting on a couple more folks.
I am okay. Can you hear me? Am I tuned in with y'all?
Yes.
All right, right on. Excited to share some info with everybody about the fun stuff we have going on.
All right, so who are we missing? Let's check to make sure we didn't get anyone who said you weren't coming. Okay, one more.
Marie, in the minutes, I don't know why, but I had written down that this meeting was going to be December 12th. And which would have been wrong because we meet the first Monday. But I don't know why that would have been in there. I changed it before I sent you the minutes.
Okay, I haven't seen them, so I think maybe we hold on those and we'll just approve them at the next meeting. Because I don't know if people have had it. All right, so we're missing one. So we're missing, I know that Lorna and Lois are not gonna make it tonight. And we're missing Levon and Kristen. So. All right, we still have a quorum, so we will go. Okay, I'm going to call the December 5th meeting of the Commission on Disabilities to order at 7:05 p.m. A reminder that this meeting is being recorded. As I indicated, absent today are Lorna, Lois, Levon, and Kristen. I don't think we're going to have a flag, so we'll just go with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll get up the agenda. Our mission is to address the needs and concerns of our disabled residents and provide their full participation in the activities and services of Wakefield. So tonight we have with us Chris Carino from Albion Cultural Exchange. So Chris, I'm just going to let you take it and let us know what great things you've been doing.
All right. First of all, can you all hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Thanks for having me again. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with y'all. Sorry I couldn't connect with you last month. I had a broken Zoom link. I don't know what happened.
Yes, you did. You weren't the only one, so we apologize to you for that.
So yeah, so I think this is becoming kind of like an annual thing, which is what I thought it was gonna be anyways. And so we're actually 1 year since the last time that I spoke with y'all, and I wanted to catch up on a lot of the stuff that we have going on regarding accessibility specifically. And we've made a lot of movement. Well, I'd say we made a lot of movement, but it's been a year. So we've made some movement and it took a year to do that kind of stuff. And I want to catch up. When we last spoke, we were speaking about accessibility on our main entrance. And at that time, I believe, we were really focusing on the Chestnut Street potential and being able to go through backwards that way. And we were hiring some new architects to do some new drawings, trying to get a hold of the people that bought the bank building and figure out what was going on there. It took a while to get the right people in place, so a lot of phone calls and whatnot, but I managed to. We have engaged a new, well, actually, I don't know if it's new. They worked on another project with us, KMA Architects, which is an architectural firm that specializes in accessibility. And they did some stuff with the rear entrance of the library, some of the principals over there. And we brought them in and started talking to them about this Chestnut Street idea and what was going on and how we're going to connect with the other building owners and how that might work. And so we connected with them. And the first thing that they had indicated as we sort of looked at that was that we needed to do really an updated accessibility audit of the entire building. And we've done several of these over the years as we've done incremental changes. And it was just really time to do another one. We were really focused sort of on this Chestnut Street idea. It seemed like it made sense based off of lots of other research we'd done. And they wanted to just make sure that we sort of took a step back, took a look at everything and focused on that. And lo and behold, wouldn't you know that once we get to it, the recommendations that they gave us weren't really what we thought they were going to be off of the Chestnut Street side. We thought that made more sense. But anyways, we engaged this company to do an accessibility audit, and they came out a couple site visits. I think the first one was on April 15th of 2022. And they went through and they did what's called an as-is document or as-built document, which is they went and remeasured everything that we had, and they audited everything in our building, including our new bathrooms. Found some mistakes that have been done in construction that we need to fix. Nothing crazy, but they found some mistakes and audited everything. And they went through and produced this report. I'm assuming that you all have a copy of it. I sent it out to you via email a month or so ago, and I printed up a bunch of them in case anybody wants me to deliver them a printed copy, because it's kind of easier to digest in the printed form where you kind of lop through it back and forth. Has everybody had an opportunity to see that report? Anybody?
I haven't read through it yet,
Okay.
but I will.
It's basically, it's a full audit. You go through the table of contents and it talks about the regulatory contents and all the legal stuff. There's a couple of pages about Massachusetts law and how that works. They do the regulatory context. They do our existing conditions, which is an as-built document, the architects call it. And then they came up with some strategy documents. And not only for people coming in on foot and wheelchair on our main level, but how are we going to get between the levels, and also, so how are we going to get between the levels, and really just anything to do with accessibility. So that would be vertical circulation and parking as well. So they came through, they did this report, and if you go through the report, you'll see that the first page is an introduction, talks about who we are. The second, third, and fourth pages or so are the regulatory context. There's a bunch of maps in here, shows pictures of lots of stuff that we have. They do some strategies, and they review different strategies for access to the building from the first floor and what that would look like in the regulatory context. So how would somebody literally get from their car? Where would the parking spaces be? And then how would they get into the building in an accessible way? So they went through 3 strategies, I believe they have in here that I'm looking at, and they analyzed where the parking spaces would be, what the ramp type things would be, and how that would work. So we did Chestnut Street entrances, we did main entrances. We actually did 2 versions of a way to come through Chestnut Street. And then we did another way to come through, through off of Albion Street. And all of that is documented in section 4 of this report. Then they came through and they made it to, I guess it was, I pointed you to their recommendations. And as far as accessibility, wheelchair accessibility for our first floor gallery, what we thought was going to be a Chestnut Street option. Their recommendation was really to go back towards Albion Street. And the 2 types of way that you can do this are through a sloped walkway or a ramp. And legally, they're defined differently. And it has to do with the specific amount of inches. So after analyzing everything and figuring out where parking spaces could be, the recommendation for all things considered was to come through off of Albion Street with the sloped walkway. And sloped walkway, like I said, there's a sloped walkway and there's a ramp, which have different legal definitions. We qualify for a sloped walkway. We do not qualify for a ramp because the sidewalks aren't wide enough. And so their recommendation was to go with a sloped walkway. It has the how many feet per rise kind of thing, and make sure that all that is together. The sloped walkway would come from Albion Street. It'd be if you were going like Albion Street towards Main Street and you pass our first door at number 11, just past the cobbler and the building with the green on the outside. That's where it would start. It would get to our front entrance and can get you in the building. That was their recommendation. A more advanced and sophisticated ramp is another option, but is currently not possible under the configuration of the current street, but could be possible in the future. However, what they came up with was there is a possible way to do it through the front. You need to go with the sloped walkway approach to make it in with all the various details that currently exist. And that would get us in compliance for the first floor for wheelchairs. And that was considered to be more preferable than coming in off of Chestnut Street. Some other interesting things in the drawings that you'll see in there are they figured out that when we do this, we can actually kind of build a stage on the front of the building so that if we were to start doing public events, think of like the Italian Fest and 4th of July and that sort of stuff. They further went on to suggest a pedestrian walkway for all of Albion Street as another recommendation in this report. And as we sort of head towards the idea that the street in front of this building could be used for festivals and other things, the idea of a shared roadway, came up and the shared stage. So as we head towards this, we can start with like a sloped walkway and start to build the elements of a stage sort of to the front of the building. And then as we get more funding and potentially as the streetscape changes, which would take longer, we can also adapt and make this into like a more significant urban kind of facility where public events can happen. There's pictures in the report that show stuff from various campuses and other places. Around the world. I saw a hand from somebody. Somebody have a question? Yeah.
Well, I do have a question. When you
Sure.
say stage, are you talking about the sloped walkway in front of the building becoming something that could be used similar to a stage? I assume there's going to be a rail on the other side because you're going to be raising up the walkway enough that it's going to require a rail. But are you saying that could be utilized as a stage, or are you talking?
Yeah, it
inside
could
the
be
building?
if we were to do a public event. Let's say that we were to not have the first floor open, and we were to do a street event. We could build a stage into the side of the building, taking advantage of the fact that we built this accessible entrance. If we're not using the interior of the building and we're doing a street festival, we could have the stage because it's going to create a platform in front of the building so that you can kind of turn into it. So the idea was to be sort of multifunctional. So if we did that and we had the street thing, we could do the stage thing. If we went further along and in 5-10 years, the town decides that they want to have a whole streetscape situation going on out there, we could expand that stage so that there could be a stage and the accessible entrance simultaneously happening. But the idea was to try to leverage multiple uses out of the funds. Like what else can we do to the front? Because the Albion Cultural Exchange, we have our main gallery, which is what everybody knows now, but we also see the street as part of our stage. And so if we're doing public stuff in the summer, in the spring, in the summer, in the fall, that kind of thing, we're going to do things in the street, we can still use the building and then do some things on the outside. So when you look at the recommendations, they recommend the sloped walkway approach, which is possible. And then you look and they have a recommendation on what they call 5.2, which is not something that's on our immediate schedule, but that is the idea of raising the entire street level of Albion Street between Main Street and Foster Street to be one level. And the benefits of that are it would make parking more flexible. You could have angled parking on one side, and you could have angled parking on one side 1 week, and then you could change the configuration, have angled parking going the other way another week. You could change it back to parallel, but it adds a safety element in that it would slow down traffic. That was one of the things that's a concern there. As we've studied it, and I spend a lot of time in that block, people come around that corner and just really hit it. And so it's kind of like a speedway. And so we're really trying to do speed mitigation and make the urban core a more pedestrian friendly thing for everybody. And in this other recommended approach, which is sort of beyond the scope of the entrance, which is my main focus today, if that's done, it would actually eliminate the sidewalks because everything would be one level. In the report, you'll see examples in like London and some other major cities where they've done this kind of thing, which makes it so that like people don't break their ankle. There's not a lot of level changes. It makes everything much more smooth and much more, compatible. It's a really cool and groovy idea. It's a little bit past where we're currently at, but the options are kind of wide open. And with this report, we've audited everything. So there's, while there's one or two things in here that I want to talk about that we want to move on, there's many other like lines of thought out, as to where we're going. So that's what this report's all about. I'll open up for questions in a minute or two, but basically, my goal here today is to sort of tell you where we came from, where we're at, and where we're going. And where we came from was a year ago. We were still trying to figure out stuff in the back and get the right people in there. And so we hired architects that were really, really focused on old buildings and accessibility, and we got them in there and figured everything out. So that's sort of where we came from. We changed our thoughts from really being on the back, and we only changed them because we analyzed every thought and we put it in the report. And then the math on it came to the idea that going back to the front made more sense. So a year ago, we were sort of thinking that now where are we at? Well, we have a report. We've thought through 100 different versions of it. That's all in this report and available. So if somebody had a question of why didn't you do that or why did you do this, we have it all documented at that point. And, this is about where we're at this point. Now, we've reviewed this report with the architects. We've reviewed it with our committee, and we've gone through, and my whole team had an opportunity to ask questions and go through everything, and we kind of ripped this apart. And we believe this report to be thorough, efficient, and money really, really well spent. The recommendation is to do this sloped walkway, and we agreed on that. So the ACE committee has actually voted to allow me to take this forward and move to the next step, which is to draw up plans for this sloped walkway. The good news is we've got the money to do it. We most likely have the money to build it. We definitely have the money to write the plans. But to do this in a way where everyone's included, the policy and sort of what we've come up with in the last couple of years with, my sort of annual visits that I promised y'all was that, I'm taking the road show. So I'm taking it to you folks because this is your specialty. And so, yeah, we hired architects and this is their specialty and these are the pros and they've done everything. Everything's regulatory in here. But, it's really important to us that we bring it, present it to you and let you have the opportunity to ask any questions and really just get your buy-in on this so that when we take it to the next level, which would be, DPW/town council folks and say, hey, we had architects do this whole thing. It seems legit. It seems like it falls within the scope of what we probably should do. We've taken it to our team, the ACE committee. We've taken it to the Commission on Disabilities Issues. And, and then we'll move it forward and we'll say, now we have, really full confidence that we'd like to move forward. And I think our next bill is like $9,000 for the next architect bill to draw it all up so that it would be ready to go out to bid. And so, I'm here today to answer questions and to hopefully get your buy-in on the idea that we should keep moving forward with accessibility for the facility.
I was really surprised when I just read sections of the report. When you sent it, you had sort of directed us to particular sections, which is what I looked at. And I was surprised to see that they did not recommend using the Chestnut Street and thought that the ramp was a really cool idea. I forget what the situation was with the parking in front of the ramp. Wasn't there supposed to be like a bump out or something so that the sidewalk became wider in that area? I can't recall.
So the two ways that you can do this are, so I've learned. I'm not an architect, but I just paid for a big report from them. I've read a lot. You can have this thing called a sloped walkway. And a sloped walkway is 48 inches wide and has certain railing considerations. It only has to have a rail, I believe, on one side. And there's other specific details to that. And then when you go with a ramp, the ramp has to be, I believe, 96 inches, which would take away the entire sidewalk. So without re-streetscaping Albion Street, we can't do a ramp. But we can do a sloped walkway, which, essentially is the minimum to put us in compliance. It would make it so that wheelchairs could come up. It had the right level change. The benefit of that, and, we did a lot of pro-con stuff of like, okay, well, what if we do this and then we change what Albion Street looks like? We can enhance this entrance and take it from a sloped walkway into a full-on, ramp, which is much wider. But we can reach compliance under our current configuration. So the idea is that this is an option that can be done today, can be executed today. And by today, I mean, I come through here, assuming everybody's okay with this. I send it off to DPW and town council and ask, for them to authorize us to spend the $9,000, which we've already had, and we can go ahead and we can do this today. If for some reason they do the whole streetscape thing and they want to do some more streetscaping on Albion Street and more stuff happens in the downtown core, we can then add to that. However, we can't put in the other option of the ramp because the sidewalk's not wide enough. So that was really, I think, what you're touching on of where we were at last year was we said, we can't do this because the sidewalk's not wide enough. Now, again, I'm not an architect, but that's why we got this KMA company, which was, it took me 6 months to just get the right people on the phone, have enough phone calls to figure out these were the right. There's a million architects that are happy to do open billing at $300 an hour to just draw pictures. Oh yeah, we should do this, we should do that. but to find the right people is really what took it. And their staged approach to this is, listen, you need accessibility, like, as soon as possible.
Right.
And we agree. And so you can do this now, and we've got the money. And then, yeah, there's a slightly better, I don't want to say it's better, there's a slightly more expensive, more enhanced way to go about it, which is, also legal, but unattainable given the current conditions, unless lots of other things happen. But we can move forward with the sloped walkway to get into compliance within the year, hopefully. And then we can expand out to, a full-on walkway, depending on what happens with the streetscape of Albion. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I thought it was inventive, right? Wasn't something that anybody was thinking about, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, when like, it has taken me months to be able to, just without having to look at my notes, describe the fact that there's a difference between a thing called a sloped walkway and a ramp. Like, to me, that was the same for months. I was in meetings and people were saying this, and I'm just like, what? But it's like, they're two totally different standards. And if we can do one and bridge to the other, and really the sequencing of the plan, and all of this is about sequencing. Let's go from this to this to this. So if we do the sloped walkway and we get that together, in the report, it also talks about elevators, where we should do those, how we should do those. Yeah, and that's a big ball of money. They're looking at some other, I can't remember, Lulas or something, Lulas and elevators, and that's like a whole other game. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars that we got to figure out at some point to connect to the other, the upstairs and the downstairs. And I've met with Donald Wong, I've met with Jason Lewis, Kate Carabinian. I'm in touch with all those folks who help fill our pipeline with money so that we can build those things. The sequence of it really is, and as I speak to them, I tell them that I try to use your money judiciously, and their money, the state's money, or whatnot, the money that they help us get. And so the sequencing of the plan is like, hey, we can't do an elevator today, but we can fix the front entrance. And once we fix the front entrance and do some of the other things that the audit came up and clear those things out, then we can get to the point of getting up to, our potential artist lofts upstairs and our classroom stuff downstairs. But we need to solve our primary level, issues first.
Right.
And, at this point, the good news is we have a report that is very thorough, written by the right people. We spent the money, we spent the time. It's taken us a year to come up with this information and bring it back. And we also believe we have the money for construction on this. We definitely have the money for design. Once the design numbers go out, which is like $9,000, and that report comes back, it'll make some projections as to how much that's going to cost us to do. My projections, based on my previous experience with all of these contracts that I've been doing for the last 8 years for this building, is that this thing's going to cost us somewhere between $50,000 and $80,000 to build. And I believe we do have that money available to us through a couple different funding sources that we have. But the first thing that we need is, in this business, it's really about getting a report done, to talk about it with groups of people, to then buy another report. And so we're sort of doing that. And then, we buy the next report, which is the actual design of the sloped walkway. Not, they say, hey, the sloped walkway can work. We say, great, draw it. And then once they draw that, we can do a calculator as to what the construction costs are going to be, and then, put it out to bid and then build. I mean, I guess the good news is this is like my third or fourth time doing this with the town and with the state, and, just really shuttling like, oh yeah, I need this report, then we do this, then we do this. And it's really just a game to get the money released and to make sure that the justification's there. And I think we're looking pretty good right now.
I have another question.
Sure.
So that will the building open with, the accessible front entryway without the elevator being in place, or whatever you decide to do for vertical circulation? Is that the plan, that it will open and then you'll work on the elevator, or are you working on all of it? And
the plan is that we would do this as our next project. And what do you call it? And then we would move phasing so we're going to clean up some just random stuff they found in the building between the bathrooms and some specific code things and some doors and some things that are sticking out a little too far. We build that, and the first floor would remain open, and then we'd start raising money for the elevator fund. So
Okay.
this audit sort of talks about elevator, going upstairs, going downstairs, getting in the building, and it talks about them in general terms. The next thing that we do, assuming everybody's on board, is we plan, okay, what's the accessible entrance on the first floor? We plan, we build that. Then we're going to come back to the architects and we're going to say, okay, we think we're ready for, the elevator. We'll have them check it. We'll have them audit what we build. So we'll build this sloped walkway and then we'll audit it to make sure it was built right. And then assuming that passes the audit, then I'll ask them for an estimate on an elevator. And that's not a commitment to an elevator. That's just like another $4,000 report where they go through and we start talking about the brands of elevators, the specifics, how much does it weigh, what can it hold, what's the exact size, and we'll go over and we'll measure the exact locations and we'll look at the materials a little more specifically. Like we have to go through a floor, can we get through that floor? And it'll give us a architect bid plan. So we don't have like bid plans for an elevator now, but once we build this, we'll then engage them to give us build plans for an elevator after that.
So I think my question is, will the Albion Street Cultural Exchange be open for business without an elevator? Will you have events on the first floor? Will you be functioning? Okay.
Yes.
So if you have,
We just won't open the second floor until we have an elevator to get to it.
okay, so you will not open the second floor or the basement until
Or the
you have it.
basement.
Okay.
They're open and like staff can go up and down, but we won't open them up to the public.
Okay, so that was my question, that if you had somebody who wanted to participate in a class activity, would you have the space on the first floor to temporarily move that activity if somebody needed access to the first floor? But you're just not going to have those activities until you've got.
Yeah, we're not doing anything that's not accessible.
Perfect. Thank you. That was my question.
Once we make upstairs accessible, we'll offer services up there. Once we make downstairs accessible, we'll offer classes down there. For now, everything happens on the first floor.
I want to thank you for doing that, because a lot of people and a lot of agencies wouldn't do that. They would just build it and say, well, gee, sorry, you can't get to everything, but we made an entrance.
We've been spending a lot of time with the state and the Mass Cultural Council, specifically the Cultural Facilities Fund Director, Jay Paget, super nice guy. I've been working with him for the last 8 years, talking about stuff. I show you this report and I talk a lot about this stuff, but other things that have happened are, 2 weeks ago, I was up at Creative Haverhill. They're converting a thing called the Cogswell School that has 22,000 square feet of space. And they're doing it a different way. And by a different way, I mean, like, they're not doing anything until they can build it all. And so they've like raised like 200, they're coming up on $2 million raised. But we went into their building and we got toured around. They don't even have power or a boiler opening. I was in there, it was freezing. They have tons of space. They bought the building, they've got the donors, and we're talking to them as we mitigate sort of our structure from a committee structure into a nonprofit structure, which has been the plan sort of for a long time, about how to get money in the door. So we've gotten money in the door from the state, $200,000 over the last few years in various chunks to do this kind of stuff. But the big money comes in the Massachusetts Cultural Council Cultural Facilities Fund, as well as places like the Cummings Foundation and other institutional, donors. And so there are other strategies when you're doing that kind of stuff about like getting tax credits. You can play this game where you buy people's tax credits. And so Erin, I believe her name's Padilla, is the executive director of Creative Haverhill. She's actually going to be at our meeting on Wednesday night to talk about their approaches and how they're doing stuff. The reason that I connected with her is because the Cultural Facilities Fund director from the state, Jay, I called him up and I said, hey, here's what we're going on. I gave him soup to nuts. He knows stuff over the years, and we've been denied funding from them. And it's because we need to get our nonprofit in, and we need to do a few other tweaks to our organizational structure. But he said, talk to Creative Haverhill. He goes, they're doing some fun stuff to get money in other ways. And then there's another place in like a week or two. No, it must be after the holidays, down in Needham that has a similar structure, and they're doing stuff. So I'm working with those guys. I'm in touch with Kate Garabedian, Donald, Jason, and those guys about, where can we get our state monies? How can we get these things done? And more specifically, I've actually talked to some, between bank presidents, ex-town council people. I've told them lots of ideas about things that we're doing and how do we keep them, on board. And a big thing that they wanted me to do was to do some case study comparables to include with my documentation as I implement, as I suggest structure changes. And so that's sort of like why I'm kind of on tour with Creative Haverhill and these other ones, so that when I talk to people in the various financing levels and people that are involved, I can reference similar case studies. So I can say, hey, this isn't Chris Carino just running his mouth because he's really excited about his idea. Hey, they're doing this in Needham with this other place. Hey, they're doing this thing, and so just known, proven models. And also just being able to share, talking with the ED of Creative Haverhill, we understand, we deal with a lot of the same people. So, what are the strategies? We tell the story a lot. How do you tell the story? And that sort of thing. So, so we're excited to keep moving forward. I mean, we're excited. Our place looks really great from our renovations that we've really done. I'm excited that I have a report that actually sums this up. This has been a problem in my head for 4 years, and just I've been trying to solve it constantly. And it was like the relief once I finally got the report. I'm like, so if someone from very technical in construction wants to know something, I'm not a construction guy. I mean, I can just say, hey, here it is.
I know you've done a lot of work, Chris. You really should be commended for that. And I hope that it's not too much of an obstacle to get to the 501c3, right? Because that's what you're trying to do, hopefully.
I think it's really just getting the team on the same page and catching people up. Lots of people, everybody has their own interests. And, people drive by our building and they see it, and we've got our signage and we've got some cool lights now and stuff like that. And so I think we have a positive image with a lot of people, but they don't understand the work and that it takes to move things forward. But, we're really starting to, for the first 4 or 5 years, there wasn't a lot of visual eye candy to represent the work. But in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, I mean, our visual status has changed significantly. We're at the point where, I have people beating down the doors trying to get in for anything and everything. And we're really just trying to focus our mission to make sure that we service everybody with what we say that we're going to do. Because we have a lot of people that want to, once we did the interior over, basically everybody wants some. And it not necessarily, it doesn't all fall within the mission of what we're doing. We're not a function hall, we're an arts and culture facility with some specific directives, which when you go into the nonprofit world and you do your 501c3s or variation of that, there's a couple different versions of 501c3, I think it's a 504, whatever. When you do those things, they make you, in the incorporation documents, talk about your vision and your story. And accessibility is part of everyone's story. But it's just more like, and this is the same with Creative Haverhill, it defines where you're going, so that when somebody randomly comes up with an idea that they're very jazzed about that might not be anywhere in your mission, you can then refer back to the mission, and it depoliticizes what's going on.
Right.
So it's not, hey, I got a call from super important official doing this because my friend said whatever. And it all becomes within the structure of the board, and in a much more structured, less political way.
Yep. Does anybody else have any questions for Chris?
Chris, if we have other questions, is there a way that we can reach you?
Absolutely. I believe my email is available. You should all have my email from some forwarded stuff, but it's chris@carinomedia.com. We also have our Albion Cultural Exchange at the town of Wakefield email, and I check that. I'm pretty available.
Yeah, you should see in the meeting notice that I sent out shortly before this meeting, I included Chris on there, so everybody would have the appropriate link, so you can pick it up from there.
And I think most people have been invited, if not once, but several times. But if you haven't been there, I think most people have. But if you haven't been there and you want a tour, just tell me. We'll shoot right down and we'll do it. We have an a cappella show going on. Look at my calendar. I think it's December 22nd. So if you want to hear some Christmas carol-y type stuff, you can do that. But I'm available, most days with a day or two's notice to, get people in there, usually after 3 in the afternoons. But if you want to come in during the day, I can do it on the weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to come back because I'm curious to the changes you've made since we were there last year.
Have you, when was the last time you were there?
Was it a year? Was it just about a year ago? It was
Did we have the floors and the lights and everything done? Because we ripped out asbestos in that building. We fixed the whole first floor. We put in new luxury vinyl tile that's slip and skid resistant and all that. We painted everything. We've got our hanging system up there. We've got our music up there. We've got LED lights in there that are, electrically efficient, and, greenhouse friendly and all that kind of stuff. Our ceiling is painted a tricorn black, which is one of the 3 true blacks that are out there, and it comes down 18 inches. We have a 14-foot ceiling, and then the ceiling's painted the black, and then it comes down 18 inches. And what that does is it gives you better lines of sight visually. And so all the hardware for the lights and stuff that's sort of built into the ceiling, when you pull it down with the paint on the walls down the 18 inches, it just kind of all disappears away. Next time you're in a building, in a room that's got really tall ceilings, if you go to you go to the gym, a Planet Fitness or something like that, something that's more like warehousey, look up at the ceiling, and you'll see that in most of the places, they take it and they take the color of the ceiling down a couple inches, and it just sort of kind of captures it all together so that it's less intimidating. It's just visually pleasing. Yeah, that's something I learned along the way. We were doing it, and I was talking to going through and giving tours, and hey, talk to this one, our light guy and paint sort of design consultant person is the guy that does Jordan's Furniture. He also does the MFA. He does a bunch of museums out in Western Mass, and I see him online, and he's constantly flying back and forth to Vegas. But he came in, and he was a guy I went to high school with when we ended up getting to him. But I spent 5 months trying to find people out of the phone book, and then someone just said, "Hey, why don't you talk to so and so?" And once you find the right person, they can answer your questions in 5 minutes. But sometimes it takes 5 months to find that person.
Right.
It's really hard. The lighting stuff, that was really hard. Everybody has an opinion, but nobody knows what they're talking about. But then we found a guy that did know what he was talking about. And once we did, everything went smoother. When we were doing our lighting, we had an architect. He did a couple iterations. He was one of the guys that we worked with over time. And, as much as he sold it and said he was invested in it, it really wasn't at the end of the day. When we talked to, the guy that we're using now, and we started talking about some stuff, he didn't say, do it this way. He said, let me show you 5 different examples of different ways I've done it, and then tell me what you think. And that's the kind of person you want to be talking to, somebody who's been there a bunch of times before. And he's not telling me what to think. He's showing me it all. And then, you get to those conclusions, and it's not, well, you probably have had this maybe if you're done on your house. You say, hey, I'm looking to try to do blah, 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 blah. And they say, well, what do you want? I'll build whatever you want. You're like, well, I don't know what I want. I mean, I need a little bit of help here. And well, you just tell me. As soon as you can tell me, I'll do it. It's the part I need is for you to help me get to that,
Right, to get
to that confidence level.
Yeah.
If I knew, I wouldn't have called you. Or I would have called you with a different phrase. But yeah, like I said, where we came from, figuring things out, Chestnut Street, figuring all that. Where are we at? Well, we've got a nice audit. We spent a lot of time on it. We spent a lot of money on it. We've got approvals. We've got money. We've got one team that's approved it. We're bringing it to your team. We're going to bring it to 3 or 4 more teams to try to move it forward. And, where are we going? Hopefully next year when I meet with you in, October, November, December, we're talking about this ramp. And now next year when we have this meeting, I'm saying, hey, and here's a new report. And this report's about elevators, and we go through and then next year I'll say, where'd we come from? And we were going to build an entrance last year. Where are we at? We built that entrance. Where are we going? We're going to build an elevator.
Do you
Keep our
need,
fingers crossed that happens for you.
Chris, you had talked about approval, and what exactly are you looking for from the Commission on Disabilities?
Really just any, if you have any objections, if you think that we're going about it wrong, if you think we missed something, You know, again, we hired, you know, the best in the business, the people that are certified with the state and have all the legal and credentials. I mean, we've got all the credentials of people that, you know what they're talking about as far as this is their profession. And then we need to go through, you know, and as a community, we want everybody to have an opportunity to give their input. So I wouldn't want to move forward with this and have you not have the opportunity to have a say. If there's something that was missing, you know, and you've had this for a while, and if something comes up, you know, I want to address and answer those questions before rather than after. I don't want to go forward and spend $9,000 and get this whole plan out there, and then you're like, wait a minute, we don't like this idea. I think this is pretty solid, but if I didn't come and speak with you all, I'd be doing a disservice to myself, to you, and to the town, because it's not about me, it's not about the building, it's about everybody.
Right, it's about making it accessible to everybody.
Right. And, you know, there's the thing, you know, accessible, and then, you know, and equitable. That's, you know, the real thing. And, you know, and people a lot of times, you know, say, well, equitable means equal. And it's like, well, no, not really. Equitable means like whatever you need to be able to use it in an equal kind of way. It, you know, but either way, we want to be equitable to everybody, as well as make sure that everybody has their opportunity and nobody can say that they were passed over.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't, you know, other than just saying, hey, does anybody have any objections? There's no like official doctrine, like I need like a signed thing with everybody's. Just really, when I talk to town council and when I talk to DPW, part of my conversation, because I haven't started these conversations, even they know that we have the report, they know that we're moving it forward. You know, one of the first questions is going to be, did I talk to you folks? And I'm going to say, well, yes, I did. You know, absolutely, we did. And then they may say, oh, you know, they may throw something else at me. But again, I've done this several times over the last 8 years. We've spent a couple $100,000 in the last 8 years on this stuff. I've run through budgets. I've run through approvals. I'm pretty sure we've got the package together the way it should be. Yes. I see a hand.
So I'm still having a little bit of trouble understanding what your sloped sidewalk would look like, because Albion Street sidewalks, to me, they're not terribly wide to begin with. So is this something that would take up the entire area in front of your building, or is it something that would take up part of the sidewalk?
The sidewalk is currently 96 inches, wide right now. The sloped walkway has a footprint of 48 inches. It would start at door number 11, which is like on the left-hand side. And the specific measurements are in the report that I sent you. And there's even, I believe, an illustration. I'll show you here. So let's see if we go to.
So from what I'm understanding, there'd be the sloped sidewalk in front of your building with the rail, but then say that somebody wasn't coming into your building, they could just kind of bypass that and walk right past it on a flat level.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
And I
if
see
you look
from
at
your
page,
I see from your website, you've already got the 2 handicap accessible bathrooms, so those are already in place. So
Yep.
that's great. And it sounds like you've really spent a lot of effort thinking about this, which is wonderful.
yeah, we spent the bathrooms were our first thing, and you know, that was almost $100,000 to get that done, and it took it took like 3 years to just plan. And you know, as I say that I've been through this several times, that was one of my first times through it. You know, so as much as I've raised a bunch of money, worked with the state senators and got the money here, raising money and spending money within the government confines are two different things. And there's, you know, a lot of ways that you have to go about it. So we've done it several times at this point. So as I do this round, I feel confident in the process. Whereas 4 or 5 years ago, honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew what we were supposed to do. I just didn't know how to do it. And so I just asked for lots of help.
So
Yeah.
I just have one other question. So
Sure.
say that an individual was in a wheelchair
Mhm.
and they were coming down that sidewalk
Uh-huh.
and they didn't want to go into your building.
Uh-huh.
Would they have enough space for their wheelchair to just continue
on by.
that?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So
well, it sounds
I'd
good
say
then.
in the report, look at page 13. It's got like a real life picture, and then they illustrate the walkway and what it will visually look like, and the dimensions, so that you can get a feel for it. So it's page 13, this picture here, which probably doesn't look good over Zoom. But if you look at page 13, it's got the picture, and then it's got like a CAD drawing, and it shows where the doors are, where the walkway would be, and the dimensions. The sidewalk is 96 inches. The sloped walkway is 48 inches. If we get to a point beyond this where the whole streetscape becomes one level, we can make the ramp bigger, and we can reconfigure things. But with this sloped walkway, actually something we didn't sort of touch on, but is in the document, there will also be 2 handicap spaces in front of the building when it's done. So when you get out of your accessible vehicle, you will be right at the entrance, and you just right up the ramp. So there's two spots in front that would then be deemed. Now that's something that is in the plan here, but I believe it's is it Renault or whatever.
Traffic.
So when this
Traffic
gets
committee.
sent to DPW, he will look at this plan and he will audit it, because that's his job, right? And so, I mean, we have our own audit, which is from a third party, and they've drawn it all up, knowing full well that it is going to be accessibly audited again by Bill and or anybody else in the DPW that wants to. And so, the decision point, at some point could be, there's a suggestion that they do some street leveling work on Albion Street, but we can get this done with the size of everything that currently exists. And that's the big thing about this report, was what can we do without having to do super major stuff? Can we afford to do this? Can we do it on the sidewalk? And the reason that we were really going back towards Chestnut Street a year ago was because the dimensions of a ramp are 96 inches. And it's got all this other stuff in it. So we said, oh, we can't do it on the front. And so when I had the architects come in and do the audit, I was telling them, I was like, okay, this is all going to happen in the back. And they're looking at me and they're like, you sure? And I'm like, no, that's why you're here. And they said, well, this is our area of expertise and we know how to do this. And so given the footprint of what you have, we can make you compliant, and you can do this, and we can tier it so that, yeah, you can have this other thing. And I said, well, we had ruled out the front. And he said, well, why? And I said, well, there's not enough space. And he said, no, but there is. And I said, okay, well, that's your degree, that's your certifications. And so when you look at this report, you look at the regulatory context, which would be like page 2. It
I
goes
sent
through,
out the report to everybody. Did you get it? I sent an email just now so that you can. I'm having
so he went
trouble
through all the
opening it.
regulatory context on page 2 and page 3 of the report. It goes over 2010 ADA standards in very specific detail. And it talks about 521 CMR rules and regulations of the MAAE. Stuff that within the industry we need to be compliant with, that I have no understanding of, which is why we hired people that do.
And
I'm the guy that presents the report. They're the ones that write it.
Bill Renault is in the process of becoming certified as an ADA coordinator, and he has incredible knowledge. So as you're building,
Yep.
bringing him in to check things as you go along might prevent the issue that usually happens, is
Yeah.
that you have builders who say, well, why are we doing it like that? Let's do it like this. The people who build sometimes don't actually understand or follow the Massachusetts Architectural Board, Access Board guidelines, which they need to, but they might be looking at ADA instead, or they just might choose to do it some way. But Bill is going to has that, and he'll have even more knowledge of that. So having him check things along the way might prevent you from having to redo anything.
Right. And he gets this report. He's one of the next people that gets this report. And he definitely needs to do that, because as this report is an audit, we had those bathrooms installed. They were designed fully compliant, but there's like 4 or 5 things that didn't get installed right. Nobody caught it, and we audited it. And in this report,
It's
things
easy
that were
to
messed up.
happen. I was sitting in a conference room at my building, and we were having some what do you call it? The monitors for shocking people. What are those called? When you're having a heart attack, the AA.
Yeah, the
AEDs.
Yes.
AEDs. Yeah,
If
I should
No.
know that. I'm a heart patient.
So we're having those installed, and they
Yeah.
were in a little self-contained cabinet that
You
they
have to
were
be at a
putting
certain
in the
height.
wall. And I happened to be watching, and fortunately, my floor was the first one, as they were reading the directions, which clearly stated how close to the floor they had to be in order to, because they were going to be protruding out of the wall enough that it was going to be a hazard for people that had visual impairment. And I watched them, and they're thinking like, well, this is way too low. Let's put it up here. And they were about to put it up high. And I went out and said, can you see what the directions say? Yeah, but look, they were going to have us install it way down low. And we have a person on our floor who uses a cane and has a service dog, that it would have been an incredible, and it didn't make sense to them. So they were just going to do it a different way, not understanding why it had to be done the way in which it was written in the directions. It happens all the time.
Yeah, yeah, I've lived that quite a
But Bill
bit.
will know that.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely the work needs to be checked. He said when the first thing that we'll do after they finish construction is we'll audit it. I mean, Bill will audit it along the way.
Yes,
but-
that's my suggestion, is having Bill audit it along the way.
And he's like I said, with the town council and whatnot, he's the guy that gets this report. He's
Right,
there's
and
like
then
three
in
people
that
get
case,
it.
if you have a builder that doesn't build to spec, it's on them. They have to change it, and it's their expense.
Right. So is there any other questions?
questions
Any
for Chris?
objections I should know about? What?
So I just got the visual, so I could see it. The only thing that we'd have to keep in mind then is there a mailbox there? Is there a light pole? Is there an electric pole? Something else, because in the drawing, it looks like there's just nothing there. But I have personally gone to look at handicapped spaces, and you try to open the door and it opens onto a mailbox, or it opens onto a light pole. So just something to keep in mind.
Our
because
mailbox has actually
in
been
the drawing,
moved.
it looks like there's nothing there, and we know there's probably something there.
Agreed. Our mailbox has actually been moved and is in the door at number 11. There used to be a drop box that the light department had, and that's been sealed off because we didn't want people really sort of throwing things into the building. And we have the mailboxes now on the far left-hand side of the building, and it's sort of a little bit more secure. But interesting that you mentioned a light pole. The street light used to be right in front of our door. And I'd say 2 years ago, when the street stuff was all getting dug up, I dug in with those guys, and the light pole in front of our building has been moved. And now the light pole is now down closer to Main Street. So it was moved like 15 feet. So it used to be right in the middle of our door, which caused all kinds of problems. And we were also putting in the sign at that point. And I said, well, why would we have a sign with all these lights and then a light pole above it with another blasting light on top of it? They were just like two projects on top of each other. And so as the street was getting dug up, they moved that light pole. So when you go down Albion Street, it used to be right in the middle of number 9, right in the center of the building. It is now down 3 windows in between the 2 buildings. So yeah, I've definitely, I've had all these things happen to me.
That was a really good comment, Judy. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, if you look at that picture, you can actually see on the middle window, to the left of the door in the middle window, there's a little steel sort of thing in the middle of the brick. And that was the old mailbox, which would be where the walkway is. And that was sealed shut probably 5 years ago. And the mail goes in through door number 11, which will not impact the walkway. So that's the extent of what I have for you. I'm available for questions, visits, any of that kind of stuff. And assuming, that there's no objections, my next step from this meeting is to say that there's no objections to my team on Wednesday. And then probably in a week or so, or maybe right after, right at the beginning of the year, that's probably the better time to do it. I will submit the fact that we've met, my team's met, the architects have met, and I will submit everything over to town council and public works for another, round of review. Assuming that round goes pretty smoothly because we've covered most of the things that they asked, then hopefully sometime this spring, we can get this out to bid and maybe, build it by summer or around summer. Any other questions? All right.
Anybody? Nope, I think we're good. Thank you for taking the time to show this to us. And
I
to
hope I didn't
send
take
us
up
a
too much of your
copy the
time, but I wanted
report.
to get it out there.
We appreciate it and appreciate all the work you're doing there and just the fact that you're paying attention to make sure that it is accessible to all.
And I'll be back next year, if not before.
Hopefully we see you before then.
Yeah, absolutely.
We see you there. Hopefully we see you at an event.
We've
down
got some
there.
big shows in the spring, and so I hope so as well.
All right, very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your time, and thanks for
Take
letting me
care,
present to the
Chris.
team.
You too.
All right.
Good night. Very interesting. It's a cool space, so hopefully we can all get down there. All right, so the next item on the agenda, as you know, we presented to the Rotary on Tuesday, November 22nd, that Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Lorna and I were down there. Triangle sent 3 representatives, and Post from Wakefield had a representative there. And it was a very nice time. They
I'm
served
sorry,
us.
Marie, did you say post?
Post, yeah, P-O-S-T. I'll get you what it stands for. Purposeful Opportunities for Successful Transition. That's what it is. So they're the 18 to 22 program in Wakefield for those individuals that don't typically graduate after the 12th grade. The Rotary, the president, Triangle did most of the conversation. I really just introduced the parties and explained that our purpose, that one of our missions this year is to focus on employment. And I think Triangle did a really nice job. They, described their programs, offered their support for any employers who are interested. Brightview had a representative there that's on the chain, that was on the Rotary. It's very interested. She said that they're having a really hard time getting workers, staff for the dining room and whatever else they do there. So hopefully there's going to be, hopefully we put a bee in the bonnet of the employers that were present that exist, that, we can match individuals through them. They come with supports through them. So, hopefully we're going to see a little more activity. I think that Post was really interested. Brian Millay was their representative, and hopefully he's going to get some of his kids over there, even if it's for internships. They, as I said, we were very well received. The Rotary indicated that this was probably one of the better presentations that they had. So I guess the next
awesome,
question
Marie.
is, yeah, I thought I was surprised, right? Because I don't know who they typically have come in. So the next question is, what's the next step? I think that's one of the things that I have on our agenda. you know, what's the next step with this? So one of the thoughts I had was that, maybe we want to do a similar presentation to the Chamber of Commerce. Too bad they couldn't have all been there together, but I think that Triangle would probably be receptive to doing that. And then I think, maybe what we need to do is in the item, send a thank you to the Rotary. That may be a public way of getting this out, right, to the other businesses that weren't represented there. I'll work on that a little bit, because obviously we need to do it sooner rather than later while, strike while the iron
Marie,
is up.
I'm wondering, since they had 3 representatives from Triangle, which is great, I'm wondering if they would be willing to do something with WCAT and maybe get something filmed. And then that could be maybe shown on cable, or maybe even be available
Good idea.
on the website as a link or something. And that way it could get out to more businesses.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion, Judy. If they wanted to, I wonder if they already have a piece of some sort, because they are Triangle seems to be very entrenched with, because they're they have 2 locations in Malden. They're very entrenched with the Malden Chamber of Commerce. So I'll reach out to that gentleman that I had been in contact with to see if maybe they don't already have something that, something that would be simple for them to do with WCAT. Because WCAT was actually, they weren't filming, but 2 of the individuals that were there from WCAT are on the Rotary board. And WCAT did a piece on Post, which I had, nobody thought to bring a laptop. I guess I just thought I understood that they were going to have some audiovisual stuff there, but they didn't. But Post, WCAT did a video for Post, like a day in the life. And it was quick, 2 minutes. And it's out on their Facebook page. And I was disappointed that we couldn't have got it up and running, because I think that would have been a nice, quick visual for the Rotary, but Ryan did a very good job of describing what Post is all about. But yeah, that's a good point, Judy. I definitely think we should reach out to WCAT and Triangle and see if we can't get a collaboration together, because then that would be something that would just consistently run. Anybody else have any suggestions as to how we can keep the conversation going? I think I want to do a little more than converse now, right? We want to see some action and some businesses actually making the move to start some employment.
Would there be a follow-up conversation with Brightview that might be helpful?
I'm just, as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking that may be exactly what we can do, because that way, if something has happened, that's something we can spotlight.
Did the Brightview person say that they would follow up directly with Triangle or with Post, or did that gel during the meeting, or do you think they need a little bit of?
Well, she handed out her business cards. She handed out her business cards to Post, and she handed out her business cards to Triangle. So I'm hoping that, they're working on potential matches, because it definitely sounded like Brightview had a need. And, the dining room, that would definitely, I can't imagine that some of the Triangle staff those would be jobs they would be capable of,
Mhm.
and as well as post, whether it be a job or an internship.
And you know what, if that works out with Brightview, then kind of doing what was done at Intelligent Lives, just maybe have the Brightview person present back to the chamber or the Rotary or both and say, by the way, we did follow up and this is what happened. And now we have employees who are working out great. So kind of, it might take a little while before all that comes together, but keeping an eye out for that to see, what's going on and how it works. So maybe it's with Triangle that you'll need to stay in touch to find out what happens.
Yeah, I'll give them a call or send an email to see if they've had any further discussions since that meeting. And what's
And is there anything we can
transpired.
do to help make that happen or send reminders, local reminders to the Wakefield people? Because, Malden seems so far away, quote unquote,
Yeah, it's really not, but yeah, well, that's why I think, I think a follow-up to the Rotary, thanking them for letting us have the opportunity, and then if we can, if it seems appropriate to put something in the item to just make it a little more public. Yeah,
And I think even if you say in the thank you that it was great, we made, connections happen, and maybe specifically call out Brightview as mention the need for employees. And if there's a way to do, if you don't think Brightview would object to that, it's, I don't see why they would, but sort of like matchmaking. Nice.
right, well, right, and I think about that often, and if we could get the businesses in town to express their needs, then we could maybe help facilitate them to fill those positions, right? Because we've got Communitas, we know who to go to, we just don't know what the needs are. And
So say that in the thank you note, just like kind of like what you said. If there are other businesses that want to express, reach out to us to express needs, we will do what we can to get you connected to the agencies who provide employees. And we'll support those employees.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to get a matchmaker license here, Marie.
Yeah, we have to keep it moving. Albeit it's, maybe a slow pace, but moving forward is moving forward.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely. Progress is at any speed is progress.
Exactly.
Yep. Congratulations on
Right, so-
getting that set up. That's really great.
Well, Levon really made that introduction, so that was helpful. And like I said, I think we should try to do it with the chamber as well. No harm.
I agree. Yeah, I
and-
think that would be great.
What I noticed is the chamber does these, I think it's the chamber, these meetings on Thursday mornings. So I wonder if maybe if I pop down there some Thursday morning to just have a conversation and put the bee in the bonnet. And see, just to make
let us know if you want other
Um,
folks to join you.
Yeah, I definitely. Really, the only other two items, I think Lorna
Marie, you're kind of breaking up.
copied the last three our yearly highlights, and oops. Can you hear me now? I must not have good connectivity.
It's better.
Better, okay. The last two items are ideas for what we should focus on next. So we just talked a little bit about employment. Is there anything else specific that we want to tackle this year?
You know, I was thinking as Chris was talking,
I know we
That-
talked,
I was wondering if once the Albion Cultural Center is really kind of up and ready for other events, could we have an event that I don't know the exact term, that is for people with autism, if for autistic youth. They do concerts at Symphony Hall where they have gotten massive amounts of input, and it's a sensory
right,
specific. So I wonder if there could be some events or an event or a yearly event or something at the cultural center that is like that is a sensory appropriate event. And I heard an interview when they were talking about all of the input they got from parents, from autistic youth, from a whole bunch of other, a range of people, not just experts on what we needed to do, not just the professional experts. They got it from the expert users, the people who directly talked about, well, this is what I would need, or this is what my child would need in order to go to the event. And they talked about the fact that whole families could come in and be really comfortable with individuals moving around the room or talking or speaking throughout the concert, and that the families usually felt that they couldn't do things together, and they felt that this, because it was set up for inclusively for their whole family, that everybody was really comfortable being there. So I wonder if we could think about down the road. I don't think they're ready for real action yet, but you know, I'm confused about the cultural center. Are they open while they're doing all of this?
they are open, and I don't know how, yeah, they're hosting events down there all the time, and I don't know what the access is right now.
I think there isn't access at this minute, but hopefully there will be soon. I was excited about their commitment to it. You know, it's legally required that they do it because they're creating public space. So they have to be accessible. The building's not old enough that it could fall under an exemption. And it shouldn't fall under an exemption. You know, if it can be made accessible, it should be made accessible. But
I don't know, it seemed kind of old to me. That the space that he's renovated looks very nice, but the upstairs was, I don't know, it seemed old to me, you know.
But I don't think it's an antique building. I don't think
No,
it's an
maybe
historical
not, maybe
building, so I
not
don't think it
antique.
got the historical building exemptions that some of them do. But I just don't want to go down that road because we don't want them to have an exemption,
Right.
so it's but
And
just something to think about is that could we figure out a way to do some kind of event that could draw people in from other towns as well to the cultural exchange.
And so thinking off of what you're saying, they are doing art shows there,
Mhm.
right? He is doing art shows, and I know that Communitas has you know, emerging artists, or however you refer to them. I recall that when we had the buddy walk back at the lake in October, there were a couple of individuals with Down syndrome that were there selling, you know, that were artists. They were selling. One young man was a photographer, and I bought some cards, note cards from him of pictures he had taken, another one, pictures he had drawn, and a young lady that works at Biddy and Bowes with Dan paints. And I see on her Facebook page, she goes to different just art shows that are around and sells her paintings and drawings. So I think what we need to do is probably be in Chris's bonnet about when they're doing things like that we need to reach out to that population. I don't think we should do a piece that has just that population. I think it should be inclusive, right? So
Exactly.
typical
Agreed.
artists and
Yeah.
everybody mixed in.
Yep.
Exactly. Agreed.
So,
He said
Yeah.
they're doing concerts too. So could they do a concert that was accessible to people with sensory issues, which would have to be changed in some ways. So that's at least my understanding from the.
so when
Boston
they
College
do the
Education.
autistic, I've seen them do movies too, right? For
Mhm.
families who have kids on the spectrum, but that's typically, I guess, would we call that inclusive? I guess it's typically those individuals and their families.
Mhm.
I don't know that the general public would typically come to that.
I think it's open to everybody, but with the realization that in this particular case, the music itself had been altered so that there were no loud crescendos, and they changed the way they were actually presenting the music so that it would be more accessible to everybody and less upsetting for individuals. And then it just sounded like the families loved it.
Yeah, I think family events are huge, and I think there are some different places. I mean, I think anytime you can get families together is a good thing, but I think there are different places that families can access those kind of things. I just wonder, I haven't seen the space, so I don't know how big it is. We've done a bunch of those different like sensory friendly things, and just you
Mhm.
want to have a like a big enough space
That's a good
is
point.
kind of what I'm thinking, just so that kids can, or adults can, kind of move about at their own speed and do kind
Yep,
of whatever they need to do. And maybe it's
Paula,
even
who would we consult with? Like, you would really need somebody who had done that before and really knew what they were doing to make it a successful event. So if that's something we wanted to do, I would think we would want to consult with someone who could go look at this space and just give us some recommendations of what we might
That's
want
a
to
good
do or
point.
can't
Yeah.
do.
yeah.
That's
I
a
think
really
some
good point, Paula, because it really does need to be the right space as well.
Yeah. I mean, I
Mhm.
think somebody, like Lauren from Recreation or myself, I think it's just, taking that on. It requires a good amount of time. And so is that something that the commission is really behind and everybody's willing to dedicate a bunch of time to? I mean, I think Communitas, I don't want to speak for Communitas, but like could dedicate, maybe a small amount of time, but we're pretty booked out with kind of the ideas that we've got, and families are really have a lot of ideas and things they want us to do, and we want to do those things, but I think we're pretty committed to the families that we do support and have supported. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's up to maybe when everybody's back together next
It could be
month.
way down the road, could be,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I would say probably not till the entrance is accessible, but because it's just, symbolically, we want it. If we're doing an accessible event, we want it to actually be accessible.
Right.
So it could be a down the road thing.
But I'll put that on our list because that's definitely something that, that's definitely something that we could pursue with Chris once he gets things up and running there.
Mhm.
just open his mind a little bit to the possibilities. All right, and then the last item was, we're supposed to, I guess, submit for the town annual report, some highlights of what we've done each year. And we've never done that. But
For this, is this fiscal year or calendar year?
you know, good point. I thought it was calendar year, but it was referenced in that documentation that we were provided, that the town was updating. I'm drawing a blank, but I'll send it back out to everybody. But that was one of the items, you know, in addition to how many people we can have on the board and their length of time and all of that, it referenced that we should submit annual highlights, and I don't recall when, so I better check that. Hopefully we didn't miss it.
Do we want to list out the highlights, assuming it's calendar year, and then I can write it up and send it to you? And
Yeah,
then
that's
look
what
at them?
that's what I was thinking. Like, I was looking, and so in 2022 we did the Intelligent Lives presentation, right?
Yep.
So that we definitely would, we definitely want to get that down. We just did the Rotary presentation. We did Wakefield 101 and Town Day. I asked.
Trying to add to the website, right? We keep trying to add
yep.
different things to the website.
Do we want to look back at the minutes and say we spoke about X number of cases or, requests for access?
Well, I'm thinking I was thinking about that too, like, the handicap parking spot on Chestnut Street. We've done a multitude now of getting handicap parking spots in place. And I asked Bill, had a conflict tonight, and I asked him if that signage has gone up yet. And he said not yet, but they're working it so soon. And then they just did the ramps at Harts Hill. They put in ramps. Not that we had a lot to do with that.
And the post office request?
Right, but I mean, really what came of that? I'd be more inclined to identify that if they had really changed the doors like we requested, but just going in and making whatever the small tweaks they made, I'm not feeling like that was a huge accomplishment. But I would definitely, I think if we just keep it to to highlights, it would definitely be Intelligent Lives, the Wakefield 101, the Town Day, and the Rotary presentation. Does that seem?
Sounds great.
Highlights.
And the board meets 10 times a year?
Right.
I think we started some conversations about housing. I don't know if that's a highlight or not, but we started some conversations.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Paula, because I want to just bring you folks up to date. I think I had mentioned at the last meeting that I think it's called Autism Pathways. They are doing we'll call it a course. I think it meets 5 times every other Saturday, 3 hours at a stint. And we just completed week 2 this past Saturday, or maybe it was week 3 now. And she's going into detail, particularly for the young adults, on the requirements in the different funding sources and the different types of housing. And so what was interesting is that I was in Biddy and Bowes this past week, meeting up with some friends, and while I was standing in line, Police Chief Scory came in with some of the Wakefield police, as well as the police chief for Melrose, and some of those folks, I guess the police chief of Melrose just retired, so they were getting
Oh, he
together
did?
to have a coffee, and police chief from Melrose, unfortunately, I don't know his name,
Lyle,
recommended
Michael.
they go to Biddy and Bowes. So Chief
Like
Scory
Michael
is
Lyle.
standing there saying to me, this is just such a gem. How come I don't know about it? I said to him, how come you don't know about it? Like, I guess you're not connected with me on Facebook because I've been obnoxious about trying to get the word out. So he and I then talked about group homes and my son, and he said to me, don't do anything, don't put him anywhere unless you talk to me first, because I'm going to be able to tell you what's that's going on here in town. So then I started to talk to him about the building at the head of the lake, and I said, you folks are going to have a presence there. Wouldn't that be a great location to have some units that had this population living there? And he said, I think that's a great idea. And he said, I would support you, get in touch with their attorney and, start the conversation. So I sent an email to this woman from Autism Pathways because, I can't be articulate about this. I don't know enough. And I said, explain this all to her. And I said to her, do you think this is a path that we could potentially travel down? And she said to me, I think it's worth the conversation. So she said, let me give this some thought. So I'm waiting to hear back from her. And if she's on board to pursue this, then I say we do that and meet with her and the police and the folks that have purchased that property and start a conversation and see if we can't influence some of the units and see what we can do. I don't know what we talked a little about was doing more like a dorm suite setup, right? Maybe 3 or 4 bedrooms with the common area. I don't know.
I think it's a great idea. And I guess, one of the things that I think about after we've kind of had our variety of conversations and just talking with some of the town councilors. And I know that we had somebody from town council come and join our meeting. And he said that it was senior housing was also a priority. Is almost kind of doing it as a collaboration, like the building committee and are going to know all the specs and the rules, kind of like the conversation we had earlier this evening about kind of what is required and what the architectural needs are, but that we kind of, could be the disability kind of experts, like they know all the regulations and they know the building codes, that we could be the people with the kind of the disability expertise. And that if we went at it from a collaboration lens, that, then we could actually make some progress. Because from my perspective, when I start to think about like trying to learn all of the different like housing codes and all, it's just too overwhelming.
It's also overwhelming, Paula, just to listen to her talk about, the different kind of vouchers and just, I'm telling you, my head just spins and it's just, yeah.
And that, I guess, because I do that work, I've been doing that for a long time, so I can almost get that. But I'm just thinking like in the, like the building, oh, well, we need this, this code or that code, if we could collaborate with some of the other committees in towns and we could bring the disability expertise and just some of the, like the questions that we were able to ask tonight. I feel like that's where we could be helpful versus, trying to kind of know everything. If we could know our piece and everybody, the building committee knows their piece and Bill Renault knows his piece. If we could kind of
Right.
all collaborate,
Oh,
I think
it
that's the best way
absolutely
to.
will have to be a collaboration. I just feel like we need to have a vision as to
Yep.
what we think, and then we work with them as to how we implement that vision.
I like your vision of the bedrooms with the common space. I think that's ideal, and a kitchen in there and a bathroom.
Right, and they're rentals, and when you read, there's some, the item has some online publications of, the meetings that they've covered where these folks have gone to the building board and the town council, and they talk about a significant, number of low income units or affordable units, I guess is the term they use. So that could be for seniors as well. And so it's what are those individual needs, right? It's what are some of the suggestions we could make? Another person I was going to invite, a friend of mine is an architect and with a son with special needs. She doesn't per se have the expertise, but she has the contacts that have the expertise they've done this in other places. And that's really, I think, somebody else that you need at the table. Someone
Right.
who's actually been involved in the building of these types of things and in other places to be able to use as an example. Like, we're not just pie in the sky. This does happen, and it has happened.
It
other
does,
places,
and it has, right? And if we need somebody from DDS there, I'm
which we
confident I could
probably
get.
do, because some of the things that she said at these trainings, when I talk about a dorm type setting or, congregate setting, she said DDS is definitely opposed to, you can't have two group homes right next door to one another. You can't have, whatever, more than 4 people in a house. She said they're very particular about that because they don't want it to be an institution. And
We can get waivers, like where Communitas is on Audubon Road is close to where American Training is. We had to get a waiver when we moved in
gotcha.
there because we're so close to American Training. So I think it's just about getting waivers and, being creative about it. And, what's your reasoning, for doing it? Yes, we don't want institutions, and institutions are not something that Massachusetts is ever going to have ever again. But, if we have this kind of housing, what's the staffing look like? I mean, I think right now too, if you have something with the creative staffing, I think DDS is going to be all about it. And especially Bonnie Hungler, our area director, she comes from a residential background. She knows the struggles.
Right,
So
their happy place is being together. Dan
Oh,
is never
absolutely.
happier than when he's at camp with 120 people just like himself, and all they do is play and have fun. I mean, he would think he died and went to heaven. So more than 4 people in a cabin, but you know what? That's what's wrong with that.
Right.
So,
I think it's just the context, right? So I think it's just setting up that context in a community environment, not off segregated somewhere where you have to do this and you have
correct.
to
At
do
the
this.
head of the lake, they're going to maybe run a shuttle to downtown into the train station. The police are going to have a presence there. The park is there. I mean, it
So
seems just like a perfect location.
he's still going to go to, there's still work opportunities. You can
Right.
still go to Triangle. Everybody can still do their different things
Gonna
that
be a
they do during
restaurant.
the day.
Yes, there's going to be a restaurant, potential job there. Yep.
So
Here's my thought is that, and I think I've told you that I hear these meetings all of the time because they're still done by Zoom. It has to happen soon because they're approving the plan. And when they approve the plan, they can't, it's approved. So if they need to change it, they need to go back to the drawing board literally and get go back to the zoning board and go through the whole permitting process again. So they have architects' drawings that are being approved. And the board does things like they say, I don't even know how many they started out with, I forget. Let's say they started off with 300 units and then the zoning board reduced it to 250 units or whatever it is. It's like that project that's right on the Reading line, where the Coast Guard housing used to be off of Hopkins Street.
Oh, yes, yes.
So
yeah.
that gigantic amount of housing that's going in there, that was, I don't know, 15 little tiny houses before, and now it's gonna have, I don't even know how many units, 200 units. But I have a feeling that they're 1 and 2 bedroom units that are going in. So I think it has to happen soon.
Are they rentals too, or are those going to be condos?
I think they're rentals. I haven't heard any
Mm.
condos going in lately because you can just raise the rent every single
Right.
year when you want to and charge outrageous amounts of money for rent. I think those are rental units too, I think, but I can ask about that. But I'm just saying that it's kind of thing that there's not a lot of time to think about it, because I don't think we have a standing to say, we want to stop the process and change everything that you've done. They could just say no,
Right.
once they've been permitted. So, but I think that whatever it is that we learn from this process, there's going to be more housing
Right.
built
I
in
agree.
Wakefield.
I agree.
There's another
So,
big thing going up on North Ave, right next to the current big thing
at the
that they
very
built on
least,
North
if
Ave.
we do get to the table with some people, we will have educated those people, right,
Yes.
to that possibility. And you're right, if this doesn't work, there'll be another, but it's again, another step.
And learning what to do and who needs to be there
Right.
is, I think, really important. But I don't know if it's too late. It might not be. And I think that if saying like, let's
Worth a
figure it out.
try. The worst they
Oh,
can
it's
say is no.
absolutely worth a
Yeah.
try. Absolutely.
Well, I'll follow up with this week with that Kathy Boyle to see, to get her thoughts, because I mean, I don't have the knowledge to move this
Marie, is she
forward.
Boyle?
She's the one that
Is she Boyle with a B or Foyle with an F? Because I wrote it both ways in different.
B with the B.
All right. So will
B.
you change that in the minutes of the last meeting? Because I think I put it with an F.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I have
I'll
no idea
do
why.
that. Just because the Zoom link's not so great and you only can hear, it's only as clear as it is. Okay, does anyone have anything else?
When's the next meeting, Marie?
That's a good question. Let's look on the calendar. It's so I'm thinking January 2nd is probably the holiday, right? So it would be the following the 9th, and I think that's the we have Linda, let's see,
Yes.
from MRC coming. Yeah.
I didn't have a last name for her or the name of her organization in there too. So if you want to put that into the
Yeah,
minutes.
it's I know it's Mass Rehab Commission. I should probably, let's see, if I have our minutes. Yeah, I don't have so I'll add that.
That'd be great.
Her
Thank
last
you.
name escapes me right now, but we have an email from her in the commission email, so I'll dig it out of there.
Another thing I'd love to see done over the next year is really beefing up the website and getting some really useful things there. Like we're talking about the links from Kathy. And is there do they take down things that are old as well? So that if there's an event coming up, when the event is done, do they take it off the website?
And I think Jen does look at that, but it should be one of us that's kind of monitoring that so that we can, make sure it has just up-to-date information. I'm trying to think of, yeah, I'll look at some of the links Kathy gave me because, that's all public information. How to apply for SNAP. I mean, just different things that, so if your income is something, a certain level, you can get some of your cable bill covered, the cell phone. She also talked about a secure credit card, which I thought was interesting, Paula. So it's a credit card that's like almost like prepaid. Sounds like there's few banks that do it, like she knew Bank of America did it. So it would be, what she's saying is for these guys to rent any kind of an apartment, a landlord can't prevent them from renting because they have a disability, but they certainly can prevent them from renting if they don't have good credit or don't have any credit. Well, how do these guys get credit? So she talked about this secured credit card where it's you're putting the money up front and you have some bill go to it every month that you can pay. Your gas if you drove, or in my case, I was thinking Dan's, karate lessons. Once a month, this guy hits my credit card, right? That's how he pays. So I could get Dan the secured credit card and the charge could go to Dan's credit card. And then we pay it every month. And she said at the end of 2 years, some of these kids have credit of like 750, whatever the number is, right? Whatever it is that makes them look good on paper to be able to rent a unit and then with this, whatever the supports they're entitled to. Yeah, she's just a wealth of knowledge, just a wealth of knowledge. And again, my head just spins at the end of those 3 hours of information, but things you never thought of. So, and that may be some things that we could put on our website.
I think that'd be great.
Anything else? No? All right. Well, then, does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Paula. And second? Thanks, Kate. Okay, so it's 8:46. We will adjourn the meeting. Happy holidays, because we won't see one another as a group before then, and we'll come back on the 12th and see Linda from Mass Rehab and hear what good things that she has to say. What is it? 9th. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay, 9th. Yeah, we'll put that in the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you, you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
You too.